successes that's taken 21 years, 20 years, 19 years to come to fruition. And, so where we are now is where we're supposed to be right now. And then where we are 5 years from now is where we're supposed to be. But I just think that sometimes people get caught up in their next move instead of really trying to be great. I've never gotten a job that I've applied for. And that is something you won't read in my bio. Every job that I've applied for, every job that I thought I should get, every job that I wanted, I never got those jobs. The only jobs that I've gotten are the jobs where people sought me out. And so I think that's, I think that's important for you guys.
You can't miss Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
I know, you can watch it in the meantime.
USA, then you miss.
Okay, so we'll get started with questions. This one is for anybody who wants to answer. For those people looking into coaching, looking to get into that, what is something that you would recommend them doing, some skills that they should have to make themselves more marketable?
Go ahead, Shimmy.
Hey, Ryan, I'm going to actually pass this on to you because I really like what you said before our call started about just about that.
Yeah. So I think the first thing that anyone needs is just the push to go for it. I mean, I was a practice player. That's where I got my juice. I was in the office all the time asking about strategies and asking about certain responsibilities that coaches and I think, I got a taste of high school, what high school was about. And I'll tell you, I was graduating USD with a business degree, and I signed a contract with Xerox. And I went up to LA, interviewed, got the job. I was driving back, and all of a sudden I just started shaking. Like I knew I did not want to do that, but I knew I had to have a conversation with my dad and tell him, I want to go coach. I want to do whatever it takes to coach. That's where my passion is, and that's where I want to go. And that's what I did. I mean, I remember the number to a T, 256 resumes I sent out, one callback. And the callback wasn't even where I ended up. I ended up at McNeese State, but I knew that I was going to chase experiences as opposed to titles. I didn't care about the titles. I did not care about, what the position actually was, I was about, I want to gain as much responsibilities and as much credibility and as much expertise as I could in order to have a sustainable long career. And no one told me to go do that. But, from Kathy Marpy to Shelley Sheetz to Eric Johnson to Lakeisha Wright, everyone on staff there at USD, just by watching them gave me the answers to go chase some experiences. And that's what I would tell you all. I mean, you got to have the passion to go jump off the ledge a little bit. And I remember, I'll just end with this. So I ended up at McNeese State. I was on the platform, the train platform, with my dad, who's from Hawaii, who doesn't like to fly. And as much as I had to convince myself to tell him, Dad, I don't want a real job, I want to go chase this coaching thing that he didn't have any idea of, the last thing he said was, if you need to come home, come home. And that was all I needed to just chase my dream.
That's awesome, Coach. Great answer. The next one is for Coach Shelley. How do you build a network, and how do you stay connected with them throughout the season?
Yeah, so I've been tagged a connector. I take a lot of pride in just staying engaged with everybody I meet. Take for you, Ashton and Dylan and Conrad. I'm sure you're on here as well. Like, I met these guys. Shimmy, I don't even know if you remember this, but we were at the Final Four last year at the WBCA watching the gavel being exchanged between Rosario and Trisha Kolo. And we were at that luncheon, right? And I saw you going over talking to these three people. I'm like, Shimmy, I hadn't seen you the whole Final Four. I start talking to you. And then I look at Dylan, I'm like, dude, it's got a Florida. And I'm like, oh my God, I know Cameron, the head coach at Florida. And so we just started talking. I talked to you, Ashton, and introduced myself to you. And then Connor, and all of a sudden you guys stayed engaged with me when I got back from the Final Four. And, but you know, and that's just a snippet of a story of staying connected. And these guys reached out to me, sent me a nice little note. And now all of a sudden, look at a year and a month later, we're doing this Zoom thing. You know, I reach out to people. It's easy when we look at our phones, right? We look at our phones after a big win and it's just, right? Everyone's texting us, hey, great win, great win. People don't text you after a loss, or people don't text you when you just got fired or resigned. You need to.
Excuse me, Shelley. I don't know about you, but I've never resigned from a job. I only get fired. So
good point. And, you know, building relationships in this business and being genuine, you get that question all the time. Well, I don't want to be fake. I don't want to be fake. You know what? Listen to people's stories. You have a connection with somebody if you just go up and introduce yourself to them, and then stay in touch. I text people all the time. Hey, just checking in with you. Hey, how you doing? Hey, thinking about you. And that's all you need to say, because that's connecting with people and really showing your genuine heart. In the midst of a season, I'm always texting people because you know what? I care about people. I care about my good friends in this business. And then my new friends that I've gathered through this Zoom. I've been on a couple with Ashton's group. You just stay constant of texting or sending a handwritten note. Oh my gosh, send a handwritten note these days. Forget the emails and whatnot. Just send a handwritten note, put a stamp on it, and stay connected that way. And that's being genuine. I truly have unfortunate stuff that's happened to me in my life where I've lost my mom and dad. I know what it's like to go into a Target and see the Mother's Day cards that are blasted all over Target, right? I know it's for Father's Day. I have, unfortunately, a fortunate list of people that I know have lost their mom or dad. And I send them a note. 2-3 weeks out prior to, because I know what they're going to go through. And that's building relationships. Those are my friends. And that's kind of how I know a lot of people, and I have a lot of people in my circle that also take care of me as well.
This one is for Coach Shimmy. How much time do you spend with your players on their mental well-being?
A lot. It's extremely important to me. And I'm not sure how many of you guys out there on the call were at our mental health panel. It might've been in Tampa. I believe it was in Tampa. It was a panel that Dosha Woods and the assistant coaches group put on. And I told a very personal story about one of my players at St. Louis University, who we ultimately had to have her committed. She was suicidal. And it was like, until you go through something like that, you don't realize as a coach, the sort of pressures and expectations and stresses that these young people have. I'm old school. I played for Trish Roberts, who played for Pat Summitt. I'm old school. And I know I look like I'm 20. Y'all are all supposed to agree to that or nod your heads, but I'm not. I'm almost 50 years old. And so you grow up a certain way, and that's what I mean by old school. And so there's a fine line between suck it up, between being tough or being soft, or actually being depressed and struggling. And until I went through what I went through back at St. Louis University, I had no idea. And now I'm over, I'm not overboard, but I'm over aware. I'm over cautious. I don't know if you guys have read What Made Maddie Run. And if you haven't yet, what are you waiting for? I've tweeted about this book. I've given this book away. I've donated copies of this book. Please go buy this book. Do yourself a favor, do your student athletes a favor. And, but the book it deals with that. And it's extremely important that as coaches, we're not trained professionals. We're not therapists, we're not psychiatrists, but we do know how to influence and how to direct our student athletes to the right resources. And I think we have an obligation. Just as much time as you spend training your student athlete or watching film with your student athlete, you're just as responsible for the mental wellness and well-being of your student athletes. You can't just sweep things under a rug. And, and so if you don't understand that in 2020, if you still don't get that, that these young kids are struggling, that these young kids are more stressed than ever, that these young kids are killing themselves because they don't know how to handle pressures or expectations, then you shouldn't be in coaching. And if you're not willing to go to presentations or read about it or study more about it or learn more about it, then you shouldn't be in coaching. And that's something that we didn't have to. I know Brian and Shelley, it wasn't something that we really faced 20 years ago when we got in the profession, but it is something that now is just as important now as how much time you spend doing individuals on the court.
Incredible answer, Coach. Thank you. The next question is for Coach Brian. What would you say to young coaches that are chasing trophies instead of chasing experience?
I think the biggest thing is, I mean, it's an interesting question just because we're all chasing trophies in the sense of that's the byproduct. And I think that's the thing that you have to have a priority of is when you chase enough experiences, you then put all of those experiences as skill sets in a toolbox, right? You get to put it in there. The trophies are the stickers that you put on the outside of the toolbox. And I think if you look at the experiences as the expertise that you're trying to bring a program and be for a program, then the byproduct is the trophies. I mean, we would not like athletics and sports if we weren't chasing the trophies. However, the trophies is always a byproduct of the systems. And I was told, and I've said this multiple times, I'm probably like, if you know me, you know this. I was told 3 things when I was a young coach: become great at 2 of the 3. And that is developing players, X's and O's, and recruiting. And if you become great at 2 of those 3, then you're going to have the expertise at some point to bring value to programs. And Shimmy said this, right? We are exactly where we need to be. And it's because of our experience and because of those skill sets that we're bringing. What I stumbled upon, the reason why I never chose recruiting is because I'm shy. Like I don't like this. I got nervous. Like looking at all these faces, I got nervous. And people who know me today, they're like, there's no way. There's no way. But like I'm not. This is not cool for me. like just seeing all these faces back to me. However, what I found is when you grind at the 2 that mean something to you, you become great at the 3rd. And just because you're there sitting. Now, I was fortunate to work with Dana Smith and Val Klupfer at Cornell. I was fortunate to work with Lynn Flanagan and Julie Wilhoit at LMU. And I don't know how many recruiting talks I was in, but I just sat there and I just listened. And think about how many recruits are on campus. Think about all those hours you're just taken in. When I got my shot at becoming a head coach at a junior college, it was so easy to me because I didn't recreate the wheel. I just started being who I was. And I think that's the thing that you all should be focused on as young coaches is just go get that toolbox filled. Everything else will fall into place.
I love that. Connor, you had a question. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask it?
Yeah, my question was for Shimmy. On top of what made Maddie run, what other books, resources, presentations, videos, etc. can people be consuming on the topic of like mental health in those subjects?
That's a great question, Connor, and I'm really happy to see your hair's grown back. That's awesome. So I don't just read basketball books or sports books. I also like to read, for example, We All Fall Down, Beautiful Boy. It's written by Nick Sheff and his dad. And it's it's a true story about a young guy, a young teen, who, because of a lot of pressures, expectations, he ends up going down the spiral of drug addiction. And so he's written 2 books, and it kind of follows him. I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Beautiful Boy, but the movie's based on the books. And that's by Nick Sheff. And so it's mental illness, but in a different way. If we think our student athletes aren't turning to drugs and alcohol to help numb, the pain that they're going through, then you're kidding yourself. Also, a couple other good books that I've really enjoyed reading, and I've read twice already, is, I don't know if you're familiar with Generation Me, and then the follow-up to that is iGen, I-G-E-N, and it's basically, it's written by Jean, I don't know how to pronounce her last name, it's Twenge, Twenge. And actually, I think she's in the San Diego area. She's a professor at San Diego State, but she wrote these books on why today's generation are more stressed, miserable, connected and disconnected than ever. And she addresses a lot of mental health issues that come as a result of that. And then another book that I've really enjoyed reading and I've given out a lot is actually written by one of Shelley's former teammates. I believe you played with Kate Fagan at Colorado. And she wrote a book called Disappearing Act, and it was about her experiences in college and how she struggled with self-identity and coming out and not wanting to come out and not being sure she could come out, and the depression that she experienced as a result of that, because that is also something that our student athletes struggle with as well. And I also want to address too, since we're talking on the mental health issue, of what we're doing now to support our athletes during this time, during the pandemic. And I think, I've been on a lot of share sessions, and we're all spending time talking about, well, how are we making our athletes better, and what drills are we able to do, and they don't have hoops, and we got to work on ball handling. Really, I think, at least for me, the priority for me right now during this time is making sure their mental needs and their academic needs are being met. Because this is such an uncertain and scary time. If they're stressed academically, then it's going to affect their mental state. So for us as a staff, Coach Butler is doing a phenomenal job of making sure that as assistant coaches, we are staying connected with our players. We're not even talking about X's and O's right now. We're just making sure that they're okay. And she's also encouraging us to be vulnerable with them. If we're struggling right now, being locked in the house, it sucks. We miss, we miss contact. We miss being able to do things. If we're struggling and we're vulnerable with our athletes, and that will give them the freedom to also be vulnerable and express what they're struggling with as well. And I think that's important, that vulnerability and authenticity in your relationships with your athletes.
Awesome answer, Coach. Devin Perez, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Oh goodness, I wasn't prepared to be put on the spot quite yet. I wanted to ask if there is, I know Coach Shimmy, you said that you've always been approached for your jobs, but maybe there's one question you should always be able and be ready to answer within an interview.
So you're asking me that?
I'm sorry, just in general for the panel, if there's one question that you feel we should always be ready to answer. I apologize.
Jimmy, I can answer that. Shimmy. What's up, Dev?
Hey.
So somebody asked me, well, actually there's 2 of them. Really funny. Dear friend of mine, Vanessa Nygaard, I was on my interview at Pepperdine, and kind of a funny question, but she asked me if I could be a fruit, what fruit would I be? Couldn't help but laugh, but that was an interview question, her being her funny self. But no, on a serious note, Dev, I had a head coach ask me why they should hire me. It's like, why should they, like, why should I hire you? And it kind of caught me off guard just a little bit. I kind of had to hesitate, with that. And then it was about the skill set that I was going to bring. My knowledge in the recruiting side, very outgoing. And so that was, you have to be ready for that, to talk about yourself and selling yourself right there in front of the head coach face to face of why should they hire you?
I think the only thing that I would add is it may not be a certain question, but just know your story and know your story inside and out. Have examples. You don't have to go into the weeds on a lot of things. I think if you have, 3 or 4 things that you hang your hat on, keep going back to those because, the longer you do this, it is about, and Shimmy says this all the time, it's about people. And I think if you understand how you can add value to that person being the head coach, to that staff, and then that program, just that your story is going to bring it and your experiences are.
Kind of going along with looking for a job, each of you have over 15 years of coaching experience. What are some key things to look for when evaluating job opportunities, things that you think are really important in your success and just your well-being and enjoyment of the opportunity that you're looking to take?
I'll start. For many of us, it was just trying to get that first job. I need somebody to hire me. But I don't know if Eric Johnson is on this Zoom. I hope he is. Love you, Eric. Great job on Monday. But it's just connecting with people. And like Brian referred to earlier, chasing experience, not titles. I was very fortunate to be with Eric Johnson for 11 years, from San Diego to Denver to Boston College, and that was my family. Eric's family, his wife and beautiful kids, and Yvonne Hawkins. I don't know if Yvonne's on here, or Lisa Faulkner and Chris Brand. They're my family, and it's not about the level you're at. It's about who you're with. Always, it's about who you're with. And the job that you're probably at right now, your feet need to be where they're at, and you need to be locked in. And if this is your first coaching gig, it's probably not gonna be your last. You're gonna be at many more places. If you're fortunate enough to be at one place, then hallelujah, amen, that you were able to get it done there. But in our business, every 3 to 5 years, we kind of tend to change jobs, change colors and what's on the front of our chest here. But it's just connecting with people and being with family. Like I said, I was very fortunate enough to be with Eric and in that squad and that crew. Love them dearly. But man, if you're happy and you're with a group of people that you flow and you're vibing and you really like each other on and off the court, away from the office, you need to stay there. You need to stay with those people. The grass is not greener on the other side. Don't chase the money and the level. Oh, I need to be at a BCS level. Hey, if you're happy where you are with the group that you're with, stay with them.
So for me, I'll answer that as well. The first job, like, how did I know that it was the right job for me? The first job that I got, because it was a job and somebody was going to give it to me. And I moved from Michigan to Seattle, Washington, packed up my car, my hoopty, and drove across the country, and did not know until I got there that I was only going to be making $475 a month. But I also did not care, because I wanted to get into coaching. And so that's how I knew my first job was the right job, because it was a job. And then after that, it's exactly what Shelley said. Like, that first job, I didn't care. Like, if the Grinch was hiring and then I was going to move to Whoville. But after that, then it became to me about the right fit. And it really wasn't about money, and it wasn't about titles. It was about exactly what Shelley said. I need to be in a place where I'm happy. We all define happiness in different ways. For Shimmy Gray Miller, happiness is, am I growing? Am I being challenged? And do I enjoy who I work for and who I work with? And if those boxes are all checked, then I'm happy. And I'm going to tell you guys, it really bothers me when some of you younger coaches, you get a job, and I think it's a good job, whether it's Division II or or Division I, but it's a good job, and you're there for 1 year, and then you call me and you say, "Hey, coach, can you please call?" And can you call this coach? And I said, I just called for you to get this job last year. Well, I know, but this is a step up. And so just be careful, exactly what Shelley said, because the grass is not always greener. And I don't know how many of you are, I'm dating myself, but I don't know, there used to be a great rapper back in the day. His name was Biggie Smalls. And he said, more money, more problems. And so just be careful what you wish for. Like for me, I chase happiness. And then when I find happiness, I work like hell to keep it.
And I guess the only thing that I would add is in, you got to look at your, do you want a long career in this? And there's no, I mean, if you do it long enough, you're what, going to retire or you're going to get fired, right? It's one of those two things. And, in the first 5 to 7 years, you just got to fight like hell to keep this dream going. I mean, I was at McNeese State, and the week before the season ends, Coach Martin comes and says, "Hey, I feel so bad, but I'm retiring." And for me, it was like, man, that's great for you. Like I was all about her, but she was genuinely concerned about me because she brought me all the way to California. And then luckily I was able to just fight like hell and get Cumberland College with Melissa Irvin. And it was funny because that was sight unseen. And I was just like, I thought I was going to Williamsburg, Virginia. And little did I know I took the left in Knoxville and lived in Kentucky for 4 years. But like, you just keep going. And then all of a sudden you transition after the 7, maybe 8th year to be like, well, what do I want out of this career? And then you gotta go for people. You gotta go for where you can be happy for 7, 10 years. And then all of a sudden it's about relevancy. Like why did Kristen Dowling hire me at Pepperdine? She wanted someone who's experienced with the WCC and experience with just developing players and recruiting. I mean, that's what it became. And so I think you're gonna go through this career and you're just gonna wind on this road, and the road, that's not the thing. It's not about the road. It's just about you getting to the next part of your career that you can call home. And I think that's the thing. Like, it should be no fear. And to kind of piggyback what Shelley and Shimmy said, you just got to do what you need to do early. But you better pick people, because people are the only ones that will let you down. It's not the level.
Great answer, Coach. Thank you. The next question is for Coach Shimmy and Coach Rosario. What did you learn most as a head coach that you value right now as an assistant?
So for me, I am a much better assistant coach this time around than I was before I was a head coach. And that's because being a head coach, I've had some good assistants and I've had some bad assistants over those 7 years. And so now, as an assistant coach to Coach Butler, I try to be the assistant coach that I needed when I was the head coach. And I have no ego. You can't possibly have the ego when you've been fired as many times as me. So I have no ego. So I understand my role, and my role is to make suggestions. And then when Coach Butler makes a decision, then my role becomes to make sure that her decision comes to fruition. So what I've learned as an assistant coach, and what I take to Amanda now, that it's not about me. It's not about me. It's not about me. Don't ever make it about me, and don't ever take things personally, because it's not about me.
I think the biggest thing is I learned 2 things, or try to learn 2 things. One, when you get your shot to be a head coach, and I've had an opportunity to be a head coach earlier in my career, and I decided not to because I'm a calculated person. I felt like the risk of learning on the job may have hurt my long-term career, so I ended up just staying where I was. But when you do become a head coach, experiment. Use it as your experiment. I mean, you're not collecting all of these experiences for nothing. You got to test what works, test what may you thought like, man, like, why aren't we doing this? Try it. You know, as an assistant, you're thinking that, and then as a head coach, try it. Like, experiment, test your philosophies, see what works, because you never know where that's going to take you. But here's the other thing I learned, and I was told this when I took the job: you will never find the assistant coach you were. And that like stuck with me, because I functioned as a head coach as an assistant. But what I got a lot when I accepted the job at Pepperdine is like, oh my God, why'd you take an assistant job type of thing? And for me, it wasn't about the title. Again, it's not about the title for me. What I learned is I'm not functioning as an assistant coach or a head coach. I'm functioning as Brian Rosario. This is who I am. And so nothing matters whether it's a title. It's just what I'm trying to bring to the program and serving Kristen as best I can, because if I can serve her the best I can and be the assistant I am, then the program flourishes then. And it's her era. It's her program. And I'm just here as someone who's, you know, cultivating the seat for a while.
I love both of that. Y'all are great answers. This one's for Coach Sheetz, but all three of you feel free to chime in. What is a really big challenge you faced early in your career as an assistant?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, we all have challenges, even as our seasoned selves are speaking tonight. You know, I think one was getting in the business, right? You know, here I was, this professional basketball player, and then trying to get in the business. I got in the business for 9 months in Pullman, Washington. I walked away, go to LA, and now I'm kind of waiting for the hiring season to come back around, right? And everyone looks at, oh, professional basketball, college player, oh, she's going to know something. And I think I was trying to establish myself as, okay, close the yearbook on my playing days, and now working through and navigating this assistant coaching job at the collegiate level, right? And then as I got a few years into it, I mean, I'm connecting still with all the coaches that recruited me, and they're seeing me as this, you know, snot-nosed little, you know, $125 point guard that played for Colorado, and I'm like, now I'm their peer, and just really put my head down and just grinding and trying to be a great assistant coach and navigating that. I think those were some challenges I made. I know for a fact I made mistakes early on that I've learned from in identifying those mistakes. You know, it's not about players today and players even 10 years ago. They don't really care about your bio, and they want to know what you can do for them to get better, help them get to the next level, whether it's pro career here in the States or over in Europe. They want to know that you care about them. They don't care about your accolades in college, that you play pro ball. And that's not even going to give them their trust. And so I would say just navigating, trying to put my head down and just really work to identify being an assistant with my peers now that recruited me, and that, you know, I had to play against their teams. And so those were some challenges I think early on that I had in my career.
I haven't had any challenges other than, you know, I thought Shelley put that very well. It's very similar experiences, very, very, very well.
Same.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Oh, go ahead. Okay. How do you build a relationship with all the players in order to coach them better? This is for everybody.
You gotta be real. Like, players are like babies and animals. Like, they know when you're being fake. Like, they sniff that out, you know? And so you have to be real. It's called vulnerable and authentic now. That's what we call it now, authenticity. I'm going to write a book on authenticity and vulnerability. Well, 20 years ago, we called it keeping it real. And you have to be real. And so that's why I think, like, that book that I mentioned earlier, that Kate Fagan wrote, why it really resonated with me, because I am a lesbian basketball coach, but I was in the closet early in my career because I thought I was supposed to be, and I thought that would hurt me in recruiting, and I thought that would, you know, hurt me in other ways professionally. But meanwhile, unbeknownst to me, the kids knew that I was gay. And they were talking about it behind my back, like, she's gay. And I had gay players on my team. And so what sort of message was I sending to them? I was basically telling them that there's something wrong with being gay, and you got to be in the closet, or you can't be successful as an out gay person. And so it was horrible. And so I think early in my career that cost me you know, an opportunity to really be more of an impactor or an influencer. I get it now. And like Maya says, when you know better, you do better. But I think that's the biggest thing you can do, is be authentic, be vulnerable, and then take time to get to know your players. Because I don't know who said it. Some famous old dead person said, what did they say? Something like, people don't know you know what I'm trying to say, unless you know how much they care about you. They don't, you know, somebody.
My Angelou, Shimmy. My Angelou said it.
Okay, there you go. And it's true. It's true. It's the same with coaching. So if I'm yelling at my player today, then they know that I care about them because of the time that I've spent off the court or getting to know them in a different way. Brian, Shelley.
I mean, that's exactly it. I mean, I don't think building relationships change. It is literally over and over again, being who you are, opening up that vault a little bit, and allowing that person to see the true self. I mean, that's what we do in dating. That's what we do with, I mean, anything. And I think that's where, you know, I know this has been the talk, right? Like, I mean, there's a lot of transfers now and things like that. And what, you know, things are happening because, you know, a coach is yelling at me, or, you know, it all comes down to relationships, and you can only be so critical of someone that matches the depth of that relationship. Once you go past that threshold, people will start taking it personal. You know, and so you got to keep digging, you got to keep building, it's just got to be that slow drip thing, because eventually a slow drip fills the glass.
Ryan, dropping a dime right there. There you go, mic drop it. Hey, I just want to say one thing about this, and then we can move on to the next question. Is I'm going to preach a little bit. We have to show up every day, y'all. Like, we have to show up every day. It is our job and responsibility for our players. We have to, when we walk through the door, first of all, when you walk through the door and you get in your car and go to work, you are on a job interview every day. You do not know what coach is watching you, what, cafeteria workers watching you. You are on an interview every day, but you need to show up every day to practice for your squad and for your players, because that's what we ask of them to do, right? How many of us get frustrated when we're like, dude, what's wrong with Sally today, man? Oh, what is wrong with her? She got attitude, or she's not practicing. Hey, point the finger right back at yourself, y'all, because we have to show up every day, and it matters. And so if we're asking that of our players, you need to ask that of yourself. Show up every day to practice, be present for each and every player. I can't preach that enough.
Kind of going along this topic of relationships with players, some of you guys mentioned it, but the transfer portal is really big So as a whole, coaches may not be doing as good of a job at every program of investing in their kids and building those relationships. That's very generic. But what are ways that you can get better at those skills and make sure that, some questions you can ask yourself to see, am I pouring into and am I showing up every day? Am I valuing and building relationships with these kids the way that I want to?
So here's an opportunity for me to be a good assistant, and that's throw a plug in for my head coach right now, who I guarantee you is not watching this. But I'm going to do it anyway because I believe in this. And so we have it's our culture. And to me, culture is just simply a way of life. Like that's a way of life. And to me, that's what culture means. And our culture at Clemson is the same culture that we had at Florida, which is TLC, trust, loyalty, and commitment. Very, very simple, but you see it everywhere. And she believes that culture drives your behaviors, which then leads to winning. Culture has to come first. And where she created TLC, it came from a place of not desperation, but like a place of hopelessness. She had gone through a stretch at Florida where she had made some bad recruiting decisions, and she thought she knew some kids well, and as it turns out, she didn't. And at the end of the season, about 4 kids transferred, or else she had to kick off, and she really, really struggled with that. And so what she did is she created this culture of TLC, trust, loyalty, and commitment, that would make it very hard for kids to want to leave. And so everything we do is guided by TLC. We recruit TLC. So you'll hear us in a recruiting meeting saying, I'm not sure that's a TLC kid, or we need to do more background. Daniel and I were having a conversation today. He's going to follow up on a kid, and that was the term we use, is to make sure that she's TLC. And so I think it's working. It's working for Amanda. We won 8 games this year, and we only had 1 kid that left at the end of the year, and she was an Australian kid, and it didn't work out for her, and she's going to go down a level, and I think that would be a better fit for her. But when you only win 8 games and a year that we had, and only 1 kid leaves, I think that says a lot about your culture. Sometimes TLC works too well. Sometimes, works too well, but that's where that comes from. And I think that you got to have a strong culture in place, and everyone needs to be on board, the assistants, the managers, everyone. But you create a culture where players feel attached to it. So if one area in their life, like playing time, isn't going well, they still will feel connected and a part of something special.
I think one actionable thing that we did consciously here, because we took over a program that had 7 seniors, and so we knew we were going to lose a lot in the sense of, okay, we got to get to work for this 20 class, but we made a mindful effort to recruit our own kids first. I mean, we called them our adopted kids, right? Because they weren't our recruits, but they're ours now, right? And so we had to recruit them first. And what that entailed is just investing in them, understanding what their aspirations are, how we can develop them, how we can show and prove that they are part of this vision that we have. And then we shifted to the 20 and then the 21 class. But, similar to what Shimmy said, in a year that they probably should have left, right? Like they tasted us, boom, they're gone. They didn't. No one did. And that is I think in terms of action, we made sure that we recruited them as hard and build those relationships as we were the 21 class, or the 20 class and the 21 class.
I just want to say one thing too. I like to provide resources for you guys. And I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with anyone on Tulane's coaching staff or not. I'm good friends with Dosha Woods, and we were having this very same conversation in one of our share sessions. Do you guys know that I think in the last 10 years, only one player has transferred out of Tulane? That's impressive, really impressive.
New Orleans has good food.
Well, wait, what was that?
It's because New Orleans has good food.
It's because New Orleans has good food. So if any of you guys want to follow up with Dosha Woods with Tulane, she can talk more about culture and not just recruiting players, but also she does a really good job of continuing to recruit her players once they become their players.
Awesome. Thank you. The next question is again for all three of you. What's one part of your job that you wish you could spend more?
You cut off. Say that one again.
For all three of you, what is one part of your job that you wish you could spend more to it?
More time doing.
I wish I could spend more time just with my players. Like, that's my favorite part of the job. You know, we have to recruit and we have to be gone. And I hate that. I hate missing practice. I hate missing out on things. I just wish that we didn't have the restrictions that we have. I just would like to spend more time with my players.
Yeah, I ditto what Shimmy says. I mean, anytime I get to see our players on the court doing what we love to do, I get excited. That's where my joy and happiness is on the court with them and just interacting with the players.
Yeah, that. I think any way we can build more of the bond with our players, whether that's more meals together, more fun times we can do together, more travel, you know, any of that stuff is what's worth it. And I think a close second is obviously just more time on the floor that we can help them achieve the aspirations that they have.
Well, your players are lucky to have all of you because you obviously love spending time with them, which is awesome. Kind of a follow-up question. Obviously, I mean, I know with my kids, some days I would say the wrong thing or do something that may kind of affect the trust that we had built, or just, you know, there's conflict in every relationship, just as humans. How do you guys go about addressing that conflict, rebuilding trust, things like that with your players and even with your staff?
Well, I'll start. It's always my fault. That's my mantra. Like if I feel like I'm having a bad day with a player, it's my bad. If I feel like we didn't move the needle on recruiting, my bad. If we lose a kid to recruit, it's my bad. Like, I literally take blame on everything, and I'm uberly competitive. That's probably why. But at the same time, I try to have self-awareness in the sense of kind of what Shelley mentioned earlier. I mean, we are the adults, and we're the adults for a reason. And I think the more we can take on that responsibility, then it keeps us in line with what we actually have to do to have better day. I mean, Shimmy says all the time, win the day, right? Like, there's going to be bad days. And Julie Wilhoit used to always say this: if you're going to have a shitty day, have the best shittiest day you can. Right. And so it's like, you just gotta keep moving. And I think that's kind of the approach that I have.
Well said, Brian. Ditto.
Okay, this was a question just put in the chat to all of you guys. Is there a weakness in your personality style that affects, and if so, how have you overcome it?
I'm very emotional. I always have been. I wish that I wasn't. Well, I used to wish that I wasn't. Now I just accept myself for who I am. But I'm very emotional and I care a lot. And sometimes you get hurt. Sometimes you put yourself out there and you get hurt. And I've had my heart broken by kids. As you can imagine, 21 years, I've had my heart broken a lot of times by kids. And it hurts. But it doesn't mean that you stop caring. It doesn't mean that you stop giving of yourself. It doesn't mean that you stop putting yourself out there. It doesn't mean that you stop trying. And so I like I said, I used to wish I didn't care so much, but that's silly. I am who I am, and I'm emotional, and I put myself out there, and sometimes I cry in front of the kids, and it is what it is. And so I'm not going to try to change anything. Not that. I shouldn't say anything. I'll try and change some things, but not that.
Yeah, well said, Shimmy. I'll add to that is, if just do right, everything that Shimmy said. Yes, I'm going to tag on that. Just do right. And if you're doing things for a thank you back from some of your players, stop trying to have the players, oh, I'm going to do this because, oh, they're going to say thank you. No, just do it because it's the right thing to do. Players that I've coached at every program is, we celebrate birthdays. I am so big on making sure that it is about your day, and I bake whatever you want. I bake whatever you want for your day. We sing happy birthday. Because I feel that your day should be celebrated. They're away from their friends and family. And so I bake, I decorate the locker room at Christmas time, and decorations and lights, and I give up my tree for the team. And these are things that I like to do. I think that they would enjoy it. And so that's why I do it. I don't do it for a thank you. In 19 years coaching, 18 at the Division I level, I have always written a senior a note the first day of practice and then the day of their senior game, and just thanking them for allowing me to coach them. Just so appreciative of every day of, them allowing me into their lives. And it's not for a thank you. It's not, oh, thank you, coach. No, this is, you do right. And that's what I've done because I think it's the right thing to do. For these guys, they're special to me, all of them. Every year, we get a new batch of newbies, new freshies, and they're my kids. I don't have kids right now, but I have 14 right now, and then all my former players. But just do right. Just do right.
Yeah. Before Brian jumps in, Shelley's right, man. Like every year I've done this for as long as I can remember. For Christmas, I give books to the players, and I pick the books out. I'm very intentional about it. I take a lot of time, and I write something different and unique, and I just put it in their lockers, the day before their last game before Christmas break. And it's always interesting of how many kids will follow up with me and thank me. And, this year, 14, 15 kids, I think 4 kids thanked me for the book. And, but it doesn't mean that next year I'm not going to do the same. I'm not going to put books in their locker again, because I'm not, just like Shelley said, I'm not doing it to get an accolade or to get a thank you text. I'm doing it because I genuinely want them to have this book. And I want, 10 years from now, hopefully they'll remember that or have the book, or it'll mean something to them. But I agree with Shelley 100%, man. You got to care in this profession, and you're going to, if you care, and sometimes you're going to get your feelings hurt, but it doesn't mean you stop caring.
I think that's the only thing I'd add is you care a little too much, that you're maybe constantly checking in with them. You're constantly, having to try to have a finger on the pulse as to like how you can improve what they need at any given time. And it's not an all-encompassing thing. It's 14 to 15 people all need different things at any given time. And I think it's, but that, I think we're looking at it as a fault, but that's probably our greatest gift, is for those kids to keep caring and to keep being who we are, because they're not perfect. We're not perfect. So it's just that that coexistence of just moving through together and being ourselves.
Okay, this one is for Coach Sheetz. Knowing what you know now, if you could go back in time and give advice to yourself as a younger assistant, what would you say?
Yeah, great question. I think I've learned throughout my years that we all need as assistants what we don't know, and we don't know everything that's on your head coach's plates. And I think a lot of us in my younger self, but a lot of the unseasoned assistants on this right now is it's not about you. So get away from saying get away from saying I did this and you. It's about we and us. And I think early on what I was doing is I was so focused on I had the greatest scout, or oh, that's my recruit. And I was also then bugging my assistant or head coach for everything. And he's like, dude, Sheetz, like, can I just get to my office, put my bag down, let me get settled and kind of start my day? Like, I know you've been in here a little bit longer than me. I get it, but just hold up on the questions. And mind you, you have to be very cognizant of your head coach. Your head coach, all they do all day long is just put out fires. They put out fires and answer questions that are fired at them. And so I think as I've progressed in my career is understanding that and knowing that when to approach your head coach with certain things that are going on with the team. It's what do they need to know, and the timing of when you're going to have that conversation with your head coach. Understanding, have the pulse on them as well. I mean, we always say, oh, assistant coaches have the pulse on the team. No, have the pulse on your head coach, because if you go in and start talking to your head coach about something and they are not ready for it, you'll be scraping some stuff off the ceiling right there. And it's not going to go the way you wanted it to go. And it could then be brought into the team, and that's not what you wanted. And so just have the pulse on your head coach, and let them get settled when they walk into the office to start their day.
I think the thing that I would tell my
Great answer.
Oh, is this for everybody? Sorry, my
Go
bad.
ahead.
Oh,
No. Go ahead. Yeah.
is don't be so shy speaking up to your peers, speaking up to doing things at the Final Four, whether it's the NABC or WBCA. Like, just don't be afraid, because like I last year, so I'm 43, been in this for a while. Last year was the first time I spoke at the WBCA, because I was always thinking like, shit, I stole everything. Like, what do I have? Like, what am I bringing to the table? But I think what I kind of understood is you're going to have your own story. And so really have a pulse of what your story is. And don't be afraid to tell it, because there's someone out there. I had a conversation with the young man who's like, he asked me the question, should I go after a head job right now? I said, well, how old are you? He said, 22. I'm like, yeah, I guess you can, but like, make sure you're on the right track, and just like, imagine 20 years from now, you're going to be on the phone with a 22-year-old asking for some advice. What are you going to tell them? And I think that's the thing, is like, just don't be afraid to speak up, be yourself, trust your story, and just chase those experiences down.
Okay, this is for everybody. What is the best advice that you could give to a young coach on how to be successful in the industry for such a long period of time?
I'll make this really short. Be loyal, work hard, do the right things. That's it. That's me, like in a nutshell. Be loyal, work hard, and do the right things.
And I kind of said what I thought too, and that would just piggyback what Shimmy said, is become an expert at 2 of the 3 things that matter in our business: X's and O's, development, and recruiting.
Yeah, yeah, all great points. I'm going to say be intentional as well. You have to be intentional about your days and about your weeks in this profession. You just can't show up and arrive in your office and say, what am I going to do today? What's going to be on the docket? Should I make a recruiting call? You need to be very, very intentional. During this self-quarantine era right now that we're in, is I listen to a prominent previous sports agent, Molly Fletcher, unbelievable speaker. And thing I took from her was be intentional about your day. So she has a calendar, and she talks about identifying and color coding it with energy, drainers, and neutral, and energy of throughout your day, or prepare your week every Sunday is what she's saying, of your week, and plan it out. Okay, where in my day are going to be my energies, where, that's going to give me energy, or I give energy to that meeting, or at that time in the day. And then what are things in my week or my day that are going to drain me, that it's going to be a difficult conversation, or it's a responsibility that I have that I'm not really excited about, but I have to get it done. And then what are some things that are just neutral? Because you have to plan and be intentional about your day coming in and about your week. We don't have time to just sit here and, I'll get to it. If you come in and just have that mentality of, I wonder what I'm going to do today, you are not going to be ready to put out those fires that come your way. When your bosses say, hey, Sheetz, man, can you do this for me? And I need it within an hour because we're going to show this in film. You need to be ready and get that done. You can't say, well, hey, coach, wait 1 second. I'm working on this project right now, so when I get to it, I'll get to it. Or you can't say, I don't know. Having a response to I don't know to your boss is not going to get you very far. So I'm just saying, be intentional. Plan out your week every Sunday night, so you know what your energies are, your drainers are, and your neutral time of your days and your week is going to be. So when something comes up or something's put on your plate, you can manage through that and be successful. And if you have that sort of mentality, I think you'll be really successful. And then also, the last thing I'll say is, don't say how hard you work. I'm going to reference Eric Johnson. I know Eric Johnson just sent me. He said he couldn't be on this, but I'm going to reference him again. He's my guy. Love him to death. He says, working hard is like breathing. It's just, that's what you have. That's what you do. So we all working hard, guys, because we're all breathing. So just be intentional about your day, about your week, and be there for your head coach. It is not about you. It is not about you. If you want to move over 6 inches in that fire seat, in that hot seat, so be it. But just know that it is not about you. This is their program, and you work for the university that pays you and signs your checks.
Shelley, did you call that the head coaching seat the fire seat?
Yes, that's why I'm an assistant still. Although a lot of you guys are pushing me to be a head coach. No, it is 6 inches, man. 6 inches is a lot of responsibility. And they put out fires all day long. That's why I call it the fire seat.
Oh, my bad. I thought you meant fire as in like the fired your seat. No, got it. Okay.
Awesome. We have one more question here before we wrap up. Just over the past 20 years, what has been the best thing about being a coach? What has brought you the most joy?
All right, I'll go, Shimmy. I got you. I beat you to the unmute thing. you know, when you get wedding invitations, baby announcements, you see them crossing the stage in graduation. I mean, it's, you know, like Shimmy referenced, you get a thank you note, you know, a couple years after they've graduated. I mean, seeing these guys go on to be successful young women into the working world. A quick story. We were on a Zoom call on Monday afternoon with Eric Johnson, who ran the Boston Marathon illegally at 3 a.m. In honor of his son Davis, whose birthday was Monday. And so all the former players at Denver got on a Zoom call, and we were just hooting it up and joshing each other. And that to me is just, that's why we do this. Those relationships with the players. Some of them you're tight with right now. Some of them you're not, but it will all come full circle. And that's why I do what I do. I'm very passionate about, I love hoops. I'm a hoop junkie, but it's about the players, and it comes around with those invitations and those wedding announcements and baby announcements, and just, yeah, having them in my life has just been a joy.
I've been really blessed. That's so cliche. Everyone says that, but it's true. You know, I've been a part of some really great teams and programs, and I've worked for some really amazing head coaches, and I've gotten to go to some NCAA tournaments, and I've got, you know, some championship rings, but I don't wear those. You know, and if you are walking around with like 3 championship rings on, you're kind of a douche, I think. I don't wear those. You know, I don't brag about the tournaments. I don't, you know, for me, because those things are so fleeting and you're always focused on the next one. But for me, after 21 years of doing this, it's just like Shelley said, it's the wedding invitations. I got one the other day, coach just had a baby, you know, it's the baby pictures, you know, that they're sending you within 24 hours after giving birth to their child. But ultimately, it's getting them to do more than they thought they could do. It's getting them to be more than they thought they could be. And that is the greatest reward. That is worth every time I've gotten fired. It is worth every losing season. It is worth every time I didn't get a thank you for a book that I put in someone's locker. But knowing that I've helped young women be more than they ever thought they could be, or do more than they ever thought they could do, is the greatest reward of all.
Well, I think this is a loaded question because it is all cliche. I think, you know, if it wasn't for Shelley Sheetz, I probably would not have gotten into coaching. You know, it was you know, I always came back to USD to do basketball camps, you know, and she was always there. And Shimmy, you know, she came out to play in our tournament at Loyola Marymount. And I think what really took our relationship from who's that little guy that is down not just 6 inches, but like 18 inches from the head coach, right? Was, you know, yeah, she was let go, but she threw it out on Twitter, like, what book should I be reading? And I sent her a book, and that's how we just started. But I think that's what it comes down to, is these relationships. I mean, I'm going through 4 pages of just faces, and I have a former player in here, Kristen, see you. I have friends who've recruited my players at a junior college, and now, you know, they're head coaches. Now I'm recruiting their kid. You know, it's like, I mean, it's relationships. It's all about relationships. I mean, I got back to a conference that I love. I mean, the WCC is just, I feel like it's my conference, you know, and to be able to walk through this series of just memories, you know, it's the best thing. And I think, you know, whatever ages you all are, you're gonna see friendly faces. You're going to see faces that you're like, man, I hated that guy, but why is he like my best friend type of thing? You know, just because it's just nuances. And I'm a late bloomer. I met my wife later in life. I got married later in life. And I was able to invite former players to the wedding, and seeing them, like, you know, dance up the dance floor was cool. And, you know, I'm 43, and I feel like this is a pivot for me now. You know, I like these things. I want, you know, I think what you guys are doing is amazing. We didn't have this. Our form of this was the Final Four. And then we were too afraid to talk to each other recruiting because we felt our head coaches would think we're not working, type of thing. And it was only at the Final Fours or camps back in the day. But you guys keep this going, because in the end, it's going to be about these faces that you see 20 years from now that are going to be with you. They're going to be by you. They're going to shoot you a text when you least expect it. And it's the perfect text at that perfect time. And that's why you do this. That's why I do it anyways. And I'm very fortunate to not only be part of this, Ashton. I love that you guys are doing this, but you know, to be on with these two. I mean, there's a history between us, and it's a history that I wouldn't trade for the world.